Ryan sat in his truck, the engine off, the faint hum of his phone charging the only sound that broke the quiet. He had parked a few houses down, out of sight, but with a clear view of the one across the street. His fingers gripped the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the house where his wife, Amanda, was supposed to be. Except she wasn't alone. She hadn't been alone for weeks. Ryan's gut had been telling him something was off for a while now. The late nights, the random book club meetings that always seemed to coincide with Chad's hours at work. He'd seen the photos, the check-ins, the sneaky tags in the background of her social media posts. That wasn't the worst of it. The worst part was when she told him she was going to meet a friend for coffee, but he knew her friend was out of town. The signs were right there, like neon lights flashing in his face. And yet, here he was, still sitting in his truck, watching the woman he loved betray him, one silent moment at a time. Ryan's phone buzzed, breaking his train of thought. Amanda's name flashed across the screen. He stared at it for a long moment before swiping to answer. His voice was steady, calm, but the quiet between his words stretched, thick with a tension that neither of them acknowledged. "Hey, Ryan," Amanda said, the sound of her voice too cheerful, too light. "Hey," Ryan replied, keeping his tone neutral. "What's up?" "Oh, just getting some things ready. A little book club gathering tonight," she said, the lie too smooth to be convincing. Ryan resisted the urge to scoff. A book club that never seemed to meet at the same place or time. That wasn't where she was, not anymore. He glanced over at the house again, watching as Amanda stepped out the front door. Chad was there, a smile stretched across his face, looking like he had just waltzed in from an ordinary Tuesday. But Ryan knew better. The way Amanda avoided eye contact, the way she fidgeted with her purse, it was all the confirmation he needed. Silence filled the line between them. Ryan stretched it, letting it grow longer than necessary. The weight of the truth, thick and suffocating, pressed on him, but he refused to break first. "Ryan," Amanda asked, her voice slipping into something more unsure now. "Is everything okay?" Ryan's eyes narrowed as he watched her walk down the driveway, Chad following closely behind her. A slow rage burned quietly in his chest, but he didn't let it show. Not yet. "Yeah, everything's fine," Ryan said, the calmness in his voice barely masking the seething anger bubbling beneath. "You just enjoy your book club, Amanda." Before she could say anything else, he hung up the phone. Ryan stayed in his truck, watching them both as they climbed into Chad's car, her hand brushing his shoulder just a little too intimately. The image made his blood run cold. He had known. He'd known for weeks, maybe even months. And now, seeing it with his own eyes, he could barely stomach it. Seething with quiet rage, Ryan took a deep breath and stared ahead, not sure what to do next. He hadn't planned on confronting her yet, not like this, not on the street where everyone could see. But somehow, in that moment, he felt like he didn't have a choice. His heart pounded in his chest as the door to his truck clicked open. With one last glance at the house where his wife had just betrayed him, he stepped out, his mind racing with every possible outcome. It was time for Amanda to face the consequences. Ryan didn't waste a second. He moved quickly, his footsteps almost silent on the sidewalk as he headed toward Chad's car, parked at the curb. He wasn't going to chase them down or yell at them in front of the neighbors. He was beyond that. But the anger that had been simmering inside him, the cold rage he had kept bottled up for so long, demanded action. He reached for the bat in the bed of his truck, something that wasn't meant for violence but rather for regaining control, a simple tool to show his presence in the most unignorable way. It was the kind of thing you did when words wouldn't suffice, when the simple act of showing up and confronting them wasn't enough. Ryan's hand tightened around the bat's handle as he walked towards the house. Amanda and Chad were still in the driveway, their voices rising in laughter as they stood by the car, oblivious to what was about to unfold. They didn't see him coming. Amanda turned first, her eyes widening when she saw him, but it was too late to hide the flustered look that quickly settled on her face. Chad didn't hesitate either, but his dismissive smirk faltered when he noticed the bat in Ryan's hand. "What the hell is this?" Chad said, stepping forward. Ryan didn't say anything at first. He let the silence hang between them, thick and uncomfortable. He didn't have to say much. The bat, held loosely in his hand, already did the talking. It was a warning, and both of them knew it. "Ryan," Amanda said, her voice high-pitched, almost panicked. "What are you doing here? This isn't what?" Ryan's voice cut through her words, sharp and clear. He took a step forward, his gaze never leaving Chad. "What is this, Amanda? Huh? You lying to me, sneaking around behind my back?" Amanda's breath caught in her throat, but she quickly recovered, putting on the same practiced calm expression she always did when she was trying to avoid responsibility. "You don't know what you're talking about," Ryan chuckled darkly. "I don't know what I'm talking about, don't I? Don't I know exactly what's going on here?" He looked at Chad, the man who had been pretending to be her friend, her confidant. The man who had no problem stepping into Ryan's life and taking what wasn't his to take. Chad didn't even have the decency to look guilty. His eyes were defiant, full of the arrogance of someone who thought they were untouchable. "You think I don't know, Chad?" Ryan's voice was low now, a dangerous whisper. "You think I'm blind to what's been going on? You've been showing up to my house, acting like everything's normal, and now you're going to act like you're the one who's wronged here? You're nothing." Chad took a step back, trying to play it cool, but Ryan saw the way his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "I'm not the one who's messed up here," Chad shot back, his voice growing louder. She's the one who what?" Ryan interrupted, finally turning his gaze to Amanda. Her eyes were wide, but she didn't speak. She didn't have to. Everything in the air between them had been said already. Every lie, every betrayal. Ryan stepped closer to her. "You've been lying to me for months. You've been sneaking around with him behind my back, pretending like everything's fine, all while I'm working my ass off, thinking you're at home waiting for me. You've been lying, Amanda, and you're not even sorry." I didn't mean for it to happen like this," she said, her voice faltering for the first time. But the way she said it didn't sound like an apology. It sounded more like an excuse, like she was trying to make it sound better than it was. Ryan's anger flared. He stepped forward, the bat now resting on his shoulder, a clear threat. "You didn't mean for it. You didn't mean for it. You've been lying, sleeping with him, while I've been working myself to the bone to provide for this family, for you, for us. And this is how you repay me?" Amanda opened her mouth, but no words came out. She knew it was too late. There was no fixing this. No amount of excuses would make her betrayal disappear. Ryan's gaze turned back to Chad, who was looking more and more uncomfortable. "I warned you, Chad," Ryan said, his tone deadly calm. "You'll both regret this. You'll regret ever thinking you could get away with it." Ryan took the bat in both hands and swung it lightly, just enough to dent the side of Chad's shiny new car. The sound of metal on metal echoed through the quiet street, and Amanda jumped, her face paling. Chad's eyes widened, his chest rising and falling in quick breaths. "This is just the beginning," Ryan said, turning his back on them, not waiting for their response. He didn't need to hear it. He had said everything he needed to say. And as he walked back to his truck, his heart still pounding in his chest, the realization hit him. This was only the start of what was coming. Ryan climbed into his truck, his hands still shaking. The confrontation, the way they had both looked at him, Amanda like she was the victim, and Chad like he was entitled to everything, had been too much to process in the moment. But it wasn't over, not by a long shot. The game had just changed. And now it was Ryan's turn to take control. Ryan slammed the truck door shut, the sound sharp and final, as if the action itself could silence the chaos in his mind. He still hadn't fully processed what had just happened. His heart was pounding, adrenaline still coursing through his veins. His mind was racing, replaying every word, every look, every moment of betrayal. But there was something else gnawing at him, something deeper. He had been so sure that when he confronted Amanda, there would be an apology, an explanation, some form of regret. Instead, she had barely said a word, and when she did speak, it was all just empty excuses, justifications. Nothing that made him feel like she was truly sorry for what she had done. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles turning white as he stared straight ahead. He wanted to drive away, to escape this nightmare, but he couldn't. Not yet. Not without hearing her say the words he needed to hear. The door to the house opened behind him. He didn't have to look to know who it was. He could feel her presence before she even stepped into his line of sight. Ryan exhaled slowly, turning to face Amanda as she walked toward the truck. She looked different now, her defiance still written in her posture, but there was something in her eyes. Something that wasn't there before. The mask had slipped, but not enough for him to see the woman he thought he married. "Ryan," she started, her voice softer this time, almost apologetic, but still far too controlled. "You don't get to just walk away from this. You don't get to destroy everything because you're angry. Destroy everything? Ryan repeated, his voice low and cold, but his hands trembled. You're the one who destroyed everything, Amanda. I didn't do this. You did. You and him. Amanda winced, but she didn't back down. Instead, she stood there, arms crossed, glaring at him as though he was the one who'd betrayed her. Don't act like I've done something unforgivable, she shot back, her voice thick with frustration. You've always been so boring, Ryan, so emotionally absent. Maybe if you actually looked at me for once instead of burying yourself in your work, this wouldn't have happened. Ryan's stomach twisted. He wanted to shout, to call her out, but he couldn't. He couldn't even get the words out because it felt like everything inside him was unraveling. This wasn't the woman he thought he knew. This wasn't the woman he had loved. You think it's my fault? Ryan asked, his voice thick with disbelief. You think this is my fault? I gave you everything I had. I worked so damn hard to give you everything, and this is how you repay me? Amanda's eyes flashed with anger, but she didn't look ashamed. If anything, she looked defensive, like she had already convinced herself she was in the right. Don't make me out to be the bad guy here, Ryan, she snapped, taking a step forward. I never asked for your money. I never asked for your stupid gifts or your perfect life. I just wanted someone who would actually care, who would actually feel something. You've been so wrapped up in your job, your business, that I didn't even exist anymore. Ryan felt his chest tighten. He wanted to scream, to lash out, but he stayed still. He had always stayed still. He had always been the one who put everyone else first, never asking for anything in return, and now this was the result. She was blaming him for everything, and somehow he had become the villain in his own life. I did care, Amanda, Ryan said, the words thick with emotion. I did care, but I wasn't enough. I guess that's what this all boils down to, doesn't it? I wasn't enough for you. I couldn't be the person you wanted me to be. So, you found someone else. Amanda took a step back, but her expression didn't soften. I didn't want anyone else, Ryan, she said, her voice almost pleading. I needed someone who could see me, who could understand me. You've always been so cold, detached. You never looked at me like you loved me anymore. Ryan clenched his jaw, his eyes burning with a mix of anger and hurt. And Chad could give you what? What I couldn't. You've been lying to me for months, Amanda. You didn't even have the decency to be honest. Amanda shifted uncomfortably, but she didn't back down. I never wanted to hurt you, Ryan, but you can't keep blaming me for your mistakes. You never saw me. You never even tried to understand why I needed more than just a provider. Her words hit harder than anything else. He didn't know how to respond, didn't know what to say. She was twisting the knife, making him feel like the bad guy, like he was the one who had failed her. Ryan took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. He couldn't keep doing this. He couldn't keep apologizing for things he didn't do. Pack your things, Amanda, he said, his voice steady but resolute. We're done. I'm done. This marriage is over. For the first time, something flickered in Amanda's eyes. The defiance wavered, and a brief, almost imperceptible flash of vulnerability appeared. But it was gone before he could make sense of it. No, she said, shaking her head slowly. You don't get to do this. You don't get to throw everything away just because you're upset. Everything was already thrown away the moment you lied to me, Ryan replied. His voice was soft, but the finality in it was unmistakable. The moment you chose him over me. Amanda opened her mouth to say something, but the words never came. She just stared at him, the weight of the situation settling in. I don't need to hear your excuses, Amanda, Ryan continued. Just pack your things. I'll have your stuff moved out by the time you get back. He didn't wait for her to respond. Without another word, he turned, heading for the door of his truck. The sound of Amanda's voice calling his name only made him walk faster. The hardest part wasn't what she had done. It wasn't even the lies. It was the way she had manipulated everything to make him feel like he was the problem. But Ryan wasn't the problem anymore. He was done being the one who bent to everyone's will. Done being the one who kept fixing everything while no one ever cared enough to fix him. As he started the truck and pulled away from the house, he didn't feel the relief he thought he would. Instead, there was only emptiness, a hollow ache that he knew would take a long time to fill. But one thing was for sure. He would never let her control him again. The morning after, Ryan woke to his phone buzzing relentlessly on the nightstand. He groggily reached for it, still exhausted from the emotional confrontation with Amanda. But as he unlocked his phone, the flood of notifications hit him like a tidal wave. Text messages, social media alerts, calls he'd missed while he'd tried to sleep off the mess of his life. He glanced at the time. 8 a.m. He had barely gotten any sleep, but that didn't matter now. The last 24 hours had been the worst of his life, and judging by the text in front of him, it wasn't getting any better. His hand hovered over the screen as the first message caught his attention. Jake. Bro, what's going on? Amanda posted something crazy. You good? Ryan frowned, sitting up straight. What the hell was Jake talking about? He opened the message and immediately a link to Amanda's Facebook page appeared. Before he could click on it, his phone started buzzing with more calls, his mom being the first. Mom? Ryan, honey, you need to see this post from Amanda. I don't know what's going on, but she's saying some wild stuff about you. Ryan exhaled sharply. He already knew. He'd seen it coming, but now, with the link open and the rush of phone calls, he couldn't avoid it. He clicked the link, and there it was. Amanda's post. The caption was as dramatic as it could get. Feeling heartbroken and betrayed. I never thought I'd have to share this, but I need to. Sometimes the people you love the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. I was manipulated, gaslit, and emotionally abandoned by the one person who was supposed to be my partner. I've always given everything for my family and for my marriage, but when I needed Ryan most, he wasn't there for me. The truth will always come out, no matter how much people try to hide it. Ryan blinked, his chest tightened, his heart thumping in his ears. His hands started shaking as his thumb scrolled through more of her post. There were pictures of her alone, tears in her eyes, but the kind of dramatic lighting and angles you see in a photo shoot, the kind that scream manipulation. She was portraying herself as the victim. Amanda's post continued. To everyone who's been supporting me through this, thank you. I don't know how to pick up the pieces of my life after such betrayal, but I will, with strength, for my kids, for my future, for my peace. Some people think they have the right to control, to manipulate, to break others for their own convenience. Well, it's time for me to stand up. I'll be better, no matter the cost. Ryan stared at the post, his mind going blank for a moment. He couldn't believe it. He could practically hear the fake sobs in her voice as she typed, pretending to be the heartbroken wife who'd been wronged. He had never seen it coming. Not like this. His phone lit up again with more messages, this time from his friends, his co-workers, even a few people who barely knew him but had seen Amanda's post. Jake. Dude. She's making it sound like you're abusive. You need to get ahead of this. Co-worker. Is everything okay? Amanda just posted something about you. Please tell me it's not true. Ryan felt sick to his stomach. This wasn't just a private betrayal. She had made it public, and now it was his word against hers. The fallout was going to be massive. His reputation, his life, everything he had worked for, could be ruined in a single moment of madness. He didn't know what to do next, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to let her control the narrative. He was going to fight back. But first, he needed proof. Ryan got to work, pulling up her social media feed and screenshotting everything he could. The post, the comments, the pity she had gathered from friends and family who had no idea what was really going on behind the scenes. This wasn't just about revenge for her. It was about something bigger. She was trying to make him look like the villain. She was manipulating people, turning them against him. The real question was why? Why now? Why destroy him like this? And who else was involved? A new message popped up. Jake, I don't know if you've seen it, but I did some digging. I've got some stuff on her, Ryan. You need to see this. Let me know when you're ready. Ryan's pulse quickened. Stuff on her? What was Jake talking about? Jake wasn't the type to dig up dirt without reason, and the mention of stuff set off a new wave of dread and curiosity. Ryan quickly replied, Ryan, what is it? Jake, let's meet up. I'll show you in person. It's bigger than you think. Ryan stood, his legs unsteady for a moment. He glanced around, the weight of the situation settling on him. This was no longer just about betrayal. This was something else. Something that had started with Amanda but might stretch a lot further than he had ever imagined. His mind raced as he started to put the pieces together. Who was Chad involved with? Was this just an affair? Or was there something else? Maybe Amanda wasn't the only one playing games. Maybe she was just part of a much bigger scheme. Jake was right. It was time to take action. Ryan couldn't wait any longer. The next few hours were a blur. He grabbed his jacket and headed out, making his way to the coffee shop where Jake had suggested they meet. His mind was a mess of frustration, fear, and an odd sense of determination. He couldn't let Amanda ruin him. He had to uncover the truth before she buried him under lies. By the time he sat across from Jake, the weight of his own reality started to hit. He was looking at his best friend, his longtime ally, but now it felt like they were on the same side of a battlefield. "Okay, show me what you found," Ryan said, trying to keep his voice steady. Jake slid his phone across the table. On the screen was a series of transactions, bank statements, wire transfers, and an email from an untraceable source that made Ryan's stomach churn. "It's not just the affair," Jake said quietly. "This is a lot bigger than that. She's been hiding something that involves you and Chad and probably a few others. This is financial fraud, Ryan." Ryan's eyes widened, his breath caught in his throat. Fraud? He scanned the evidence in disbelief. There it was, Amanda and Chad, linked to a series of suspicious financial activities across several states. They had been using their relationship to scam people, to launder money, to steal from him and others. His gut twisted. He hadn't just been betrayed by his wife. He'd been part of a much bigger con, and now it was all coming to light. "Are you sure about this?" Ryan asked, barely able to wrap his head around what he was seeing. "I'm sure," Jake said, nodding. "I've been going over it for hours. There's more to this than you think. They've been using you as a cover, and now she's trying to turn the tide in her favor, ruin your name before you figure it out." Ryan exhaled, his mind reeling. This wasn't just about Amanda's affair anymore. It was about getting his life back, about clearing his name. He had no idea what was coming next, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going down without a fight. Ryan sat in his office, staring at the files Jake had given him, his mind racing as he sifted through page after page of documents. The proof was undeniable, and yet it felt like something out of a bad movie. Each new discovery seemed to drag him deeper into a nightmare. Jake had told him the truth. The financial fraud wasn't just some side hustle. It was organized, systematic, and it involved people Ryan never thought he'd see in the mix. Chad, Amanda, and now a growing list of accomplices, all linked together in a web of deceit that stretched across multiple states. Ryan's head swam with the implications. For the past few days, he had tried to piece together what had happened, what he had missed. It wasn't just an affair. It was theft on a grand scale. And Ryan had been caught in the middle of it, blind to the fact that his wife had been playing him for months, if not years. He was interrupted by a knock on the door, and Jake stepped inside, his face drawn tight with concern. "Anything new?" Jake asked, crossing the room to sit at the desk across from Ryan. Ryan nodded slowly, pushing a stack of papers toward his friend. "Look at this. They were siphoning money out of my business accounts, through fake vendors, fake expenses. It's all here, and it's not just my accounts. They've been doing this with other businesses too, small companies, mostly people who wouldn't notice the small transactions." Jake picked up the papers and skimmed through them. His brow furrowed as he went through each detail. "This is bad, Ryan. Really bad. They were using you as a cover to launder money through your business." Ryan's stomach twisted. The weight of it all was starting to feel unbearable. He had built this business from the ground up. He had trusted people, worked tirelessly to make something of himself, only to find out that someone close to him had been using him to clean money. It felt like a betrayal on a whole new level. "Look at this," Ryan said, pointing to one of the accounts. "This transaction, $50,000 transferred from my account to a company called Swift Investments. I've never heard of them." Jake nodded, his fingers tapping lightly on the desk as he processed the information. "I've heard of Swift. They're involved in some pretty shady deals. And they're not the only ones. I found several other companies, all linked to the same few names. This isn't just about Chad and Amanda. They've got connections, Ryan. People who know how to cover their tracks." Ryan's mind raced with thoughts of what this meant for him. His name, his business, everything he'd worked for. It could all come crashing down if this got out. "We need to go to the authorities, Ryan. This is beyond you and me now," Jake said, his voice low and urgent. Ryan rubbed his face with both hands, feeling the weight of the decision pressing on him. "I'm not sure I can trust anyone anymore. The The last thing I want is to get dragged into this even further. What if they're all connected? What if I'm the one who ends up in the hot seat? Jake leaned forward, looking him in the eye. You've got proof. You've got everything you need to protect yourself. The only way out of this is to go public, to expose everything. You can't just keep it to yourself. They'll only find a way to bury it if you stay silent. Ryan looked at Jake, trying to make sense of it all. His heart was heavy, his thoughts conflicted. But deep down, he knew Jake was right. He couldn't sit on this. The fraud wasn't just going to disappear. He had to do something, or he'd lose everything. Okay, Ryan said, his voice steady but with an edge of finality. But we do this carefully. I need to make sure I'm not walking into a trap. I'm not trusting anyone who's already in Amanda's circle. Jake gave him a solemn nod. We'll go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. No mistakes. Ryan sat back in his chair, staring at the documents again. His life was about to change. He knew that. But there was something else, something deeper than just business and money. This had gone too far. He wasn't just fighting for his reputation anymore. He was fighting to clear his name, to take control of the mess Amanda had created. A few hours later, Ryan and Jake sat at a conference table with a lawyer, a friend of Jake's who had experience dealing with financial crimes. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Sarah, didn't waste any time. She listened intently as Ryan laid out everything he knew, showing her the documentation Jake had found. This is more than just fraud, Sarah said after reviewing the papers. This is organized crime, money laundering, possibly racketeering. Whoever you're dealing with here isn't just some small-time crooks. You've got serious players in the mix. Ryan's heart sank further. Serious players. He hadn't even considered that. But it made sense now. This wasn't just about Amanda or Chad. It was about something much bigger. They were pawns in a much larger game, and Ryan had been caught in the crossfire. We'll need to get law enforcement involved, Sarah continued. But you're right to be cautious. There are people who can make things disappear, people who know how to play both sides. I suggest you don't make any moves without backup. Ryan nodded, his mind already spinning with the next steps. What's the plan? How do we get ahead of this? Sarah's lips pressed into a tight line. We start by tracking the money. We need to follow the trail, get evidence of who's at the top of this operation. I'll start making calls, get you set up with a contact in law enforcement who can handle this discreetly. Ryan didn't even hesitate. Do it. As Sarah left to start her part of the investigation, Jake turned to Ryan, his face serious. You're sure about this, man? Once we go to the authorities, there's no going back. Ryan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on him. But he couldn't back out. Not now. He had been betrayed in the worst way possible, and it was time to take control. I'm sure, Ryan said, his voice firm. It's time to finish this. As the door closed behind Jake, Ryan sat alone in the conference room for a long moment, looking at the papers scattered in front of him. The fraud, the lies, the affair. It was all a web that had been spun around him for too long. Now, he was going to unravel it. He wasn't going to let Amanda or anyone else take everything he had worked for. Not this time. The next morning, Ryan woke up to a new wave of messages, most of them from numbers he didn't recognize. Some were just text messages asking if he was okay. Others were more sinister, full of pity and concern that felt more like guilt trips than genuine empathy. But it wasn't the texts that made his stomach churn. It was the voicemail. Ryan played it with his thumb, the sound of Amanda's shaky, desperate voice cutting through the silence of his apartment. Ryan, please, she started, her voice almost cracking. I know you're angry, but you have to understand. I never meant for any of this to happen. Please, we can fix this. We can work things out. Chad he's not like you. You're the one I want. Please don't let everything we built just fall apart. Come home. Talk to me. I'm sorry. Ryan stood frozen, his mind replaying her words over and over. The vulnerability in her voice. The same vulnerability she'd shown in the past, just enough to pull him back in before. But now, he wasn't buying it. He knew it was a manipulation, a last-ditch effort to hold on to whatever she thought she could salvage. But the words she spoke, they were like daggers to his chest. You're the one I want. It felt like a slap in the face after everything. The affair, the lies. This wasn't the first time she had tried to manipulate him. The tears in her voice were enough to make him second guess, to wonder for a brief moment if it could all go back to normal. But Ryan shook his head, letting out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. His phone buzzed again, this time a text from Amanda. "Please, Ryan, let's talk. I'm at the house. Just, please come home. I need you." Ryan let out a sharp breath. This wasn't about love. It wasn't about regret. This was about control. And Amanda was going to do whatever she could to make him feel like he was the one who had wronged her. It was time to finish this once and for all. An hour later, Ryan stood at the front door of the house he'd once shared with Amanda. It felt strange, standing there now, knowing that he was walking into the lion's den. But this wasn't about his feelings anymore. This was about taking back control, about making sure she couldn't manipulate him again. He knocked twice, each strike of his knuckles echoing through the silence. The door swung open to reveal Amanda standing there, her eyes swollen, her makeup smeared. She looked like she had been crying for hours, but the act was too rehearsed. "Ryan," she whispered, stepping back to let him in. "Thank you for coming. I knew you would." He didn't move. "No, Amanda. I came to make something clear. We're done. This marriage is over." Her face faltered, and for a moment, Ryan thought he saw something resembling regret in her eyes. But she quickly masked it with a shaky smile, stepping forward as if to take his hand. "Ryan, please. You don't understand. I was confused. I understand perfectly," Ryan interrupted, his voice cold and sharp. He didn't want her touching him. He didn't want to be anywhere near her. "You were selfish, Amanda. You used me. You lied to me. And now you want me to believe that you're sorry? That everything can just go back to normal?" Her hand fell to her side, her smile slipping away. "You don't know what it's been like," she said, her voice cracking again. "Chad and we didn't mean for it to happen. I never wanted to hurt you, Ryan. I was lonely. You weren't there for me. You were always working, always focused on the business. I didn't know what else to do." Ryan's jaw tightened. "This isn't about your loneliness, Amanda. This is about you making a choice. You chose Chad. You chose to betray me. You knew what you were doing, and you did it anyway." She shook her head, a few more tears falling down her cheeks. "Number, I never wanted to hurt you. You have to believe me. I've made mistakes, but I'm willing to fix them. We can work this out. I can't lose you, Ryan. I love you." Ryan clenched his fists, his anger flaring up again. "You don't love me, Amanda. You never did. If you did, you wouldn't have done this to me." For a moment, she looked like she was going to say something else, but then she paused, her lips trembling. "Please," she whispered, stepping closer to him. "Please, don't do this. I'll leave Chad. I'll make everything right. Just give me a chance." Ryan's heart sank as he listened to her. Her desperation was palpable, but it was a desperate plea to get him back, not because she truly loved him, but because she was losing control. "I don't believe you anymore," he said flatly, stepping back from her. "This whole time, I've been the one trying to make things work, and you've just been using me. I'm done. I don't owe you anything." "I'm not your backup plan anymore, Amanda." The words stung, but they were the truth. Ryan felt no relief, no satisfaction, just an emptiness. But it was necessary. He couldn't keep letting her manipulate him. Not anymore. Amanda stood there, her face crumbling in front of him. "You don't understand," she said, her voice shaking. "You don't understand how hard this has been for me. I'm not perfect, Ryan, but I tried. I tried so hard." Ryan's heart softened for a moment, but only for a moment. He had seen her cry before. He had seen her apologize before. But it was never enough. The damage had already been done. She had already made her choices. "I'm not your savior, Amanda," Ryan said softly, his voice still firm. "You're not my responsibility anymore." She collapsed against the doorframe, her sobs quiet but fierce. "Ryan, please," she whispered, barely able to keep her voice steady. "I'll fix it. I'll do whatever it takes." Ryan shook his head, his chest heavy. He couldn't fix her anymore. He couldn't fix what she had broken. He had to walk away, no matter how much it hurt. With one last glance at her, he turned and walked out the door, leaving Amanda standing there, alone in the silence of their shattered life. As he reached his truck, the finality of it all hit him like a ton of bricks. He had made the right choice. He knew that, but the ache, the emptiness of walking away from everything he had known, everything he thought he had, was almost unbearable. But he couldn't go back. He couldn't be the person she wanted him to be anymore. the person who always forgave. This was the end. And for the first time in a long time, Ryan felt a glimmer of hope. Ryan couldn't escape the feeling that something bigger was unfolding, even as he tried to focus on clearing his head. The past few days had been a blur. Amanda's desperate pleas, the social media smear campaign, the discovery of the fraud. He hadn't even had time to process it all. But now, with the weight of everything on his shoulders, he was starting to understand just how deep this betrayal went. Jake had called him earlier in the day, urgency in his voice. "We need to meet. I found something. Something big." Ryan didn't hesitate. He grabbed his jacket and headed straight for their usual meeting spot. He had no idea what Jake had uncovered, but the word big was enough to set his nerves on edge. Whatever it was, it couldn't be good. Jake was already there when Ryan arrived, sitting at a corner booth in their favorite diner, his face grim as he sifted through a stack of papers. The air between them was thick with tension. "What did you find?" Ryan asked, taking a seat across from him, trying to stay calm, but already feeling the adrenaline start to kick in. Jake slid the papers across the table. "It's not just Amanda and Chad. There's a whole network behind them. They've been involved in money laundering for years, using fake businesses as a front for all kinds of shady deals. And the worst part is, they've got people in high places." Ryan picked up the papers, scanning through them quickly. The first page had names, lots of names, and numbers. But it was the last sheet that caught his attention. Chad's name was on it, yes, but so were other familiar faces. People Ryan had met at events, people who had connections to his business. The truth hit him like a punch to the stomach. Chad was just a small part of something much bigger. "This is bad, Jake," Ryan muttered, his hand gripping the papers tightly. "How deep does this go?" "I've been digging," Jake said, looking around nervously. "And I'm telling you, Ryan, this isn't just a personal betrayal. This is organized crime. People have been using your name, your business, to cover up their tracks. And now, they're trying to pin it all on you." Ryan's mind raced, trying to process it all. If what Jake was saying was true, Amanda's betrayal was just the beginning. The entire life he had built, the business he had worked so hard for, was now at risk of being dragged through the mud. "We need to go to the cops," Jake said, his voice low, "before they make their move. You're not just dealing with Amanda and Chad anymore. You're dealing with people who will stop at nothing to cover their tracks." Ryan didn't know what to say. Part of him wanted to run, to get as far away from this mess as possible. But deep down, he knew he couldn't. He wasn't going to let them destroy him, not without a fight. As they discussed their next steps, a text message buzzed on Ryan's phone. It was from an unknown number. "Unknown number. We know what you're doing. Don't think you're in control. You're just a pawn in a much bigger game. If you want to keep your secrets hidden, you'll stop poking around. Or else." Ryan's stomach dropped. His pulse quickened as he read the message again. "You're just a pawn in a much bigger game." He looked up at Jake, his face pale. "I think they know we're onto them. I think they've been watching us." Jake's eyes widened. "What the hell does that mean?" Ryan swallowed hard, his voice tight. "It means we're not just up against Amanda and Chad. We're up against a whole organization, one that has eyes everywhere. If they want to keep their operation quiet, they'll do whatever it takes to stop us." Before Jake could respond, Ryan's phone buzzed again, this time a call from an unknown number. His heart skipped a beat. "Ryan," the voice on the other end said, a low, menacing tone threading through the words. "You don't know who you're messing with. If you think you can just expose us without consequence, you're wrong." Ryan felt the anger rising again, but he held it back. "Who is this?" he demanded, his voice steady. The voice laughed, dark and cold. "Let's just say we're the ones pulling the strings. The people you've been digging into, they don't have your best interest at heart, and if you keep pushing, we'll make sure you regret it." Before Ryan could say another word, the line went dead. He stared at the phone in his hand, his chest tight with fear and frustration. "This is bigger than we thought," Ryan said, his voice shaking. "We have to act fast, Jake. We can't wait for the cops anymore. They're already watching us." Jake's face was pale, but he nodded. "What do we do?" Ryan looked at the papers once more, the names, the numbers, the web of connections that now seemed to span every corner of his life. He took a deep breath, the weight of it all settling on his shoulders. "We're going straight to Chad. We confront him, find out who he's working with. If we can get him to talk, we can take down the whole operation." Jake hesitated, but Ryan's resolve was clear. If we do this, we're in it all the way. No turning back. Ryan stood, his mind made up. There's no turning back now. I'm going to make them regret thinking they could control me. It wasn't long before they found themselves driving to Chad's apartment, the final confrontation looming. Ryan's hands gripped the wheel, his eyes focused on the road ahead. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. Jake's voice broke the silence. You ready for this? Ryan didn't answer immediately. He just kept driving, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. But as he pulled up to the building where Chad lived, Ryan knew there was no turning back. He wasn't just fighting for his business anymore. He was fighting for his freedom. Let's do this, Ryan finally said, his voice low but firm. They walked into the building with purpose, heading straight for Chad's apartment. Ryan's mind was a blur, but there was one thought he kept returning to. He wasn't going to let Chad, let anyone win. As they reached Chad's door, Ryan knocked once, hard, the sound echoing down the hallway. The door opened a crack, and there was Chad, looking disheveled, his face still wearing that smug expression that had always made Ryan want to punch him. What do you want? Chad asked, his voice low, defensive. Ryan stepped forward, his voice cold and controlled. I want answers, Chad, now. Chad's eyes flicked to Jake, then back to Ryan, a flicker of recognition crossing his face. Come inside, Chad muttered, stepping aside reluctantly. Ryan didn't wait for another invitation. He pushed past Chad, Jake following close behind. This wasn't just about exposing Chad anymore. It was about bringing the whole operation down. And this time, Ryan wasn't going to let anyone stop him. Chad closed the door behind them, his face tight with concern. You really want to do this, Ryan? You have no idea what you're getting into. Ryan looked him straight in the eye. I know exactly what I'm getting into. Chad swallowed hard, his gaze darting nervously. This isn't just business. You can't win this fight. They'll come for you, Ryan. You won't walk away from this. Ryan smiled, but it wasn't a smile of victory. It was a smile of finality. I've already walked away from everything else, Chad. This question mark, this is the last thing I'm going to finish. And with that, the final confrontation began. The air in Ryan's lungs felt thick as he stood outside Chad's apartment, watching the door swing shut behind him. The confrontation had been intense, but Ryan knew it wasn't over. Chad had been evasive, nervous, and ultimately uncooperative. Ryan and Jake had gotten what they needed. Chad had confirmed enough to show they weren't just up against a local con man. This operation stretched much further than they ever imagined, and it was clear Chad was just a pawn in the grand scheme of things. It had been a tense few hours after their visit to Chad's apartment. As soon as they had left, Ryan had called Sarah, the lawyer who had been guiding him through this mess. They'd decided it was time to go straight to the police, not just for Amanda and Chad, but for everyone involved in the fraudulent operations. By the time Ryan got back to his apartment, the weight of it all settled into his bones. He had gathered evidence, mountains of it, and now it was time to make the official move. The police were coming, and everything would change. Ryan's phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. It was Sarah. Sarah, I've got news. The police are en route. They'll be at Amanda's and Chad's places in about 20 minutes. Are you ready for this? Ryan stared at the screen for a moment, his fingers gripping the phone tighter than he intended. The moment he hit send, everything would change. He'd be exposing Amanda's entire operation, the people involved, and most importantly, himself. The weight of his decision was massive. He hit reply. Ryan, I'm ready. Let's end this. Ryan stood outside Amanda's house, his heart hammering in his chest. It was a cold, gray morning, the kind that made everything feel heavier than it already was. The house that had once felt like home now felt like a tomb. Every step he took toward it felt like walking into his own past, one that had been twisted and corrupted. Jake stood by his side, and Sarah was in her car across the street, on standby for when the police arrived. The tension was palpable. I never thought I'd be here, man, Jake muttered, staring at the house with a grim expression. This is too much. We could have just walked away from this whole thing. But here we are. Ryan exhaled sharply. Walking away wasn't an option, Jake. Not when I know what's really going on. Amanda and Chad, they've ruined everything. It's time to make them pay for it. A car pulled up behind them, and Ryan's stomach dropped as he turned. 3 police vehicles rolled into the driveway. their sirens cutting through the still morning air like a blade. Officers began pouring out, their uniforms crisp, their movements practiced. Sarah stepped out of her car, giving Ryan a nod. This was it, the end of the road. The police officers approached, led by Detective Turner, a seasoned investigator who had handled high-profile cases before. Ryan knew he was in good hands. Turner extended his hand toward Ryan, his face serious but not unfriendly. "Mr. Ryan, I assume?" Turner said, his voice firm. "We're ready to make the arrests. You've been invaluable in helping us with this case." Ryan nodded, his throat dry. "I just want this over with." Turner's eyes shifted toward Amanda's house, his expression hardening. It's about to be. Inside Amanda's house, she was sitting on the couch, staring at her phone with an unreadable expression. She hadn't heard the sirens yet, too absorbed in the texts and messages coming through from her friends. Most of them were supportive, but some were beginning to question her motives, especially after the barrage of messages from Ryan's side. She had been trying to convince herself this was all going to blow over, that Ryan would forgive her. Maybe he'd come back to her. She was sure that he would, just like he always did. But now, a feeling of unease bubbled in her stomach. She couldn't shake the thought that something was off. Something was about to happen. A sudden knock on the door made her freeze. The knock came again, louder this time. And then, without warning, the door swung open. Amanda's heart stopped as Detective Turner and a team of officers stormed into the house. "Amanda Keller?" Turner called out, his voice cold, firm. "You're under arrest for money laundering, fraud, and conspiracy to commit organized crime. You have the right to remain silent." Amanda's mouth went dry. She stared at the officers, too shocked to speak. Her world was unraveling faster than she could process. "What? No, this can't be happening. I didn't—" "You don't have to say anything right now," Turner said, his tone unwavering. "But anything you do say will be used against you in court." Amanda's knees buckled, but one of the officers was quick to catch her, holding her upright as they cuffed her hands behind her back. Her breaths became shallow, panic rising in her chest. No, this isn't happening," she repeated over and over, the words coming out like a desperate chant. Ryan was standing in the doorway now, watching as Amanda was led past him by two officers. Her face was a mix of shock, disbelief, and fury, and for the first time, Ryan saw her for what she truly was. A woman who had destroyed everything for the sake of her own selfishness. A woman who had lied and manipulated him, and now she would pay the price for it. "You did this," Amanda spat as she passed him, her voice raw with emotion. "You brought this on yourself, Ryan. This is all your fault. You think you can just ruin my life?" Ryan stood there, silent for a moment, before he spoke, his voice low but resolute. "You're the one who ruined everything, Amanda. Not me, not this. You." The officers led Amanda outside, and Ryan turned away, his throat tight with emotion he couldn't quite place. Relief, maybe? But there was something darker in the pit of his stomach, too. The feeling that everything had changed, that his life, his business, his entire future would never be the same again. As the officers took Amanda to the car, Ryan's phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a message from Jake. "Jake, it's not over. You need to check Chad's place." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. He had a sinking feeling in his gut. He had seen Amanda's arrest coming. But Chad? Ryan stepped into his truck, determination in his movements. This wasn't the end. It couldn't be. Not until he had exposed every last person involved. He wasn't walking away from this. Not now. Ryan and Jake arrived at Chad's apartment within minutes. The parking lot was empty, the building standing silent in front of them. They were both on edge, every step bringing them closer to the final confrontation. "Let's do this," Ryan said quietly, his hand on the door handle. But as soon as the door swung open, they saw the mess. Papers scattered everywhere, drawers emptied, and the unmistakable signs of a hurried departure. Chad was gone, and in his place was the smell of fear. The game wasn't over, not by a long shot. Ryan's heart was still pounding as he stared at the mess inside Chad's apartment. Empty drawers, a tossed-over couch, the unmistakable sign of someone who had just packed up and disappeared in a hurry. There were no signs of struggle, no evidence that Chad had been taken by force. It was as if he had just run. Ryan's chest tightened as his eyes scanned the room. He didn't know where Chad had gone, but he knew one thing for sure. The pieces were falling into place. Everything Amanda and Chad had built was coming down. The truth was finally spilling out, and there was no way they could escape it. "Damn it," Jake muttered, looking around the apartment with a mixture of disbelief and anger. "This is a disaster. We're close, Ryan, but Chad's on the run now. What the hell do we do?" Ryan didn't answer immediately. His mind was still on the events that had just unfolded. Amanda's arrest, the way she had looked at him when they'd taken her away, the rage in her eyes. It was almost as if she still thought she could manipulate him, like nothing had changed. But she hadn't won. She hadn't broken him. And now, with Chad gone, the game had changed again. Ryan stepped forward into the apartment, ignoring the chaos around him. There was a part of him, the part that had spent so long trying to fix everything, that wanted to tear apart everything in sight. But that wasn't the way forward. Not anymore. He needed to finish this. "I'll call the cops," Ryan finally said, pulling his phone from his pocket. "We've got what we need, Jake. They'll get to Chad. They'll track him down. And when they do, everything will come out. The fraud, the money laundering, the lies." Jake sighed, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "Yeah, but it's still a mess. We've got no idea where Chad's gone. He's got connections. This is just the tip of the iceberg, Ryan." Ryan nodded. The weight of it all pressed down on him. But in that moment, he felt something else, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in so long. Peace. He had done everything he could. He had fought for what was right. And now, the truth was out. He dialed the police, going through the details once more, explaining the fraud, the connections between Amanda and Chad, and the possibility of other accomplices. The police were on it, but Ryan wasn't naive enough to think it would be over quickly. This wasn't going to be a simple case of people getting arrested and the world going back to normal. Ryan hung up and looked at Jake. "We've done everything we can. The cops have the information. We've got the evidence. It's just a matter of time now." Jake met his gaze, his face serious but somehow lighter. "Yeah, I guess we have. You know, Ryan, for all the chaos, I've got to hand it to you. You didn't let them ruin you." Ryan managed a small smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I almost let them, though. I almost let her, but not anymore." Later that day, Ryan found himself back at home, sitting in the dimly lit living room with a bottle of whiskey on the coffee table, his mind still racing. He couldn't remember the last time he had been able to just sit and breathe without worrying about the next phone call or email. The case wasn't closed yet, and it wouldn't be for a long time, but the weight of it was starting to lift. The front door opened, and Ryan turned to see his mother standing there, her face a mixture of concern and hesitance. She stepped inside slowly, glancing at the empty bottles on the counter before meeting Ryan's gaze. "Ryan," she started softly, her voice tentative, "I just wanted to check on you. I know this has been hard." Ryan swallowed the bitter taste in his throat, standing up to meet her. "Yeah, it's been hard. But it's done, Mom. I've done everything I can. It's out in the open. I'm not the one hiding anymore." His mother's face twisted with guilt, her hands wringing together. I know I haven't been there for you, but you have to understand. I just wanted what was best for you. I didn't know what to do." Ryan's chest tightened, but he held his ground. "You didn't know, but you didn't try either. You just went along with it. You watched her manipulate me, and you said nothing." His mother's eyes filled with tears, and she stepped toward him, her voice pleading. "Ryan, I was just trying to protect you. I didn't want to lose you too." Ryan closed his eyes, fighting the anger that surged in his chest. But this wasn't the time to argue. He couldn't keep fighting everyone, not now. "You didn't lose me, Mom," Ryan said softly, looking at her with a mixture of resignation and finality. "But you lost my trust, and that's not something you can fix with an apology." She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. Ryan's heart ached for her, but he couldn't find it in himself to forgive her just yet. She had chosen Amanda's side for too long, and now the damage was done. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I should have seen it. I should have done more." Ryan shook his head. "It's too late for that." He turned away from her, the weight of everything still pressing down on him. He needed to move on. He needed to heal. And that started with cutting the toxic ties that had kept him chained for so long. As Ryan walked toward the window, looking out at the quiet street, he allowed himself a deep breath. It was over. The battle wasn't won completely yet. But the war had shifted in his favor. He wasn't just a victim anymore. He was free. The phone buzzed in his pocket, snapping him from his thoughts. Ryan pulled it out, seeing a message from Jake. "Jake, it's over. They arrested Chad." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. This was it. It was finally happening. He stared at the phone, the words sinking in. Chad was in custody. Amanda was being processed. The fraud, the lies, everything was coming to light. And Ryan, despite everything he had lost, had won. It had taken everything in him to get to this point, but he was standing on the other side of it now. The storm was over. For the first time in a long time, Ryan felt a sense of peace settle over him. The emptiness he had felt before was still there, but now it was filled with something else: strength. And maybe, just maybe, there was hope for a new beginning. Ryan stood at the front window, staring out into the quiet street. The weight of the past few weeks had settled on his shoulders, but now, with Chad behind bars and Amanda's betrayal exposed, he was left with an uncomfortable emptiness. The world outside seemed unchanged, but everything in his life had shifted. His business was still intact, for now, but the damage to his heart, to his sense of trust, was much harder to repair. He didn't know what he expected. Justice? Vindication? He had gotten those things, in a sense. Chad was arrested. Amanda would follow soon enough. The fraud was exposed, and with it, the truth about their lies. But it felt hollow. His life, his marriage, his sense of self. All of it had been built on a lie. The knock at the door startled him out of his thoughts. He knew who it was before he even turned around. Amanda. Her final desperate plea for attention had come and gone, but there was something about this knock, something different about it that made him pause. Ryan walked to the door slowly, his heart in his throat. When he opened it, there she was. Amanda. Standing on the doorstep, her hands trembling, her eyes red from crying. She looked broken, a mere shadow of the woman who had once been his wife. But despite her appearance, Ryan saw through the facade. This wasn't about her regrets. This was about control. This was the last thing she would do to try and reel him back in. She looked at him, her voice shaky but firm. "Ryan, please, I need to talk to you." Ryan stood still, his face hardening. "We've already talked, Amanda. There's nothing left to say." Amanda stepped forward, her hand reaching for his arm, but Ryan pulled away instinctively. He didn't want her touch, not now, not after everything. "Please, just listen," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "I've made so many mistakes. I know I can't fix everything I've done, but you have to understand. I was lost. I was scared. You were so busy, so distant. I didn't know what else to do." Ryan's chest tightened. He wanted to walk away. He wanted to slam the door and never see her again. But there was something in her tone, some last thread of a connection he had with her, that made him hesitate. "I was there, Amanda," he said quietly, his voice steady but full of pain. "I was there for everything, for you, for us, and you used me. You lied to me. You chose him, not once, but again and again." Amanda's eyes filled with tears, but her face hardened. "You don't get it. You think you've been the perfect husband, Ryan. But you weren't. You were never there for me when I needed you. I had to find someone who would look at me, who would care about me." She paused, her breath shaky. "I loved you, Ryan. I really did. But I couldn't keep pretending anymore." Ryan's anger flared, but he kept it under control. "No, Amanda. You didn't love me. You loved what I could give you, the life I provided. But it wasn't enough for you. And now look where we are." Amanda flinched, but she didn't back down. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I never meant for things to end like this." Ryan's eyes locked onto hers, the anger still simmering inside him, but also something else: sadness. For the woman she once was, for the woman he thought he had known. "You made a choice, Amanda. Every step of the way, you made a choice, and now it's time to live with it," Ryan said, his voice calm but firm. He turned to walk back into the house, but before he could get far, Amanda's voice stopped him. "Ryan, please, you have to understand. I'm sorry. I know I hurt you, but I didn't know what to do. You were never really here." Ryan's heart clenched. He turned back to face her, his eyes softening despite himself. "I was here, Amanda. but I was never enough. Not for you. And I can't keep living my life pretending I am." Amanda stood frozen, her face a mix of regret and something else, something Ryan couldn't quite place. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. "I'm done," Ryan said quietly, more to himself than to her. "It's over." She stood there in silence, tears streaming down her face. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came. She just stood there, her shoulders slumped, defeated. Ryan stepped past her, walking back into the house, and for the first time in a long time, he felt something like peace wash over him. The final chapter had been written. It was over. Later that evening, as Ryan sat alone in his living room, the weight of everything still hanging on his chest, his phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Jake. "Jake, it's done. They've got Chad in custody. The whole network's been exposed. You're free, Ryan. It's over." Ryan read the message twice, letting the words sink in. It's over. The relief came in waves, but it wasn't enough to drown out the emptiness that still lingered inside. The battle was won. But the cost had been high. He stared out the window at the city below, the streetlights twinkling in the distance. The world was moving on, but for him, nothing would ever be the same. Ryan took a deep breath, setting his phone down on the table. It was time to rebuild, to start fresh. He wasn't the same person he had been when all of this started, and while the scars would remain, he knew now that he would never allow himself to be manipulated again. He had taken control of his life, and for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. The doorbell rang suddenly, pulling Ryan from his thoughts. His heart skipped a beat. He wasn't expecting anyone. He opened the door cautiously. Standing in front of him was a woman, a familiar face. It was Lisa, Chad's ex-girlfriend. She looked at him, her expression a mixture of concern and something else. "I know this might be the last person you want to see right now," she said softly, "but I think there's something you need to know." Ryan's curiosity piqued. He stepped aside, allowing her in. He had been expecting a lot of things over the past few days, but this was unexpected. "Okay," Ryan said, his voice steady. "What's this about?" Lisa looked at him, her eyes filled with something darker. "It's about Amanda. You don't know the whole story yet. There's more to what she did, and I think it's time you knew." Ryan's stomach tightened again. The game wasn't over, not yet.